Steelers fans, take a deep breath, because what just came out of this new report shook the foundation of the franchise in a way nobody saw coming. For the first time in a long time, the conversation in Pittsburgh goes far beyond schemes, adjustments, or roster moves. Now, all eyes are on something much bigger, the future of the most stable pillar this organization has ever had. When a major NFL insider suggests that a historic figure within the team might be considering turning the page, the impact is immediate. The shockwaves this sends across Steelers Nation show just how massive the potential shift could be, especially when this kind of information tends to surface long before anything becomes official. And that's exactly why you need to stay locked in until the end of today's video, because nothing happening right now is small, and everything points to a defining moment in Pittsburgh Steelers history. Before we dive in, smash that like button to support the channel and show your black and gold until the end. The idea of Tomlin considering a departure is something fans aren't used to facing. For nearly 2 decades, the defining thread of the Steelers' identity has been consistency at the top, a coach who never delivers losing seasons, who navigates chaos as if it's air he breathes, who commands a respect across the league that most organizations would spend decades trying to manufacture. Yet the truth from this situation is clear. If Tomlin ever were to leave, it would not be through a firing. It would be through a trade, because Pittsburgh is not about to eat the remainder of Tomlin's contract nor let him coach against them while they pay his salary. And just like the Sean Payton deal, a coach of Tomlin's caliber brings premium draft capital. A first-rounder is the starting point. A second-rounder is realistic. A team desperate for stability could offer more. But the wildest part is that Tomlin would have full control of where he goes. The no-trade clause in his contract means he gets to choose. The Steelers can't ship him to a bottom-tier franchise stuck in dysfunction. Tomlin would have to look across the landscape of openings, current and potential, and decide where he sees alignment. And when you scan the list, one destination stands out in a way that makes you stop and think. The Tennessee Titans. Not because the Titans are perfect, but because they check nearly every box a veteran coach looks for when deciding where to plant a second NFL chapter. They have a rookie quarterback in Cam Ward who has flashed real upside. They have a high draft pick coming this offseason, potentially even the #1 pick, giving Tomlin the ability to shape the roster immediately. They have foundational defensive pieces like Jeffrey Simmons and Tvondre Sweat. They have young talent at receiver, stability on the offensive line, and a new state-of-the-art stadium on the way. And most importantly, they have a fan base starving for stability, something Tomlin provides better than almost anyone alive. If he walked into Nashville and finished 9-8 in year 1, they'd treat him like royalty. Still, even with all of that laid out, the expectation from inside Pittsburgh remains that Tomlin will return next season. The Rooney family prides itself on loyalty. They have never fired a head coach, and Tomlin, future Hall of Famer or not, still has years remaining on his deal. But the more this season dips into inconsistency, the more this narrative grows. And moments like the one from his most recent press conference only amplify the conversation, because Tomlin didn't just talk injuries or status updates. He admitted, openly, that the Steelers may need to target the middle of the field more in the passing game. For years, fans have begged for this. Analysts have displayed clip after clip showing open receivers between the hashes, and Tomlin himself has long been tied to an offensive philosophy that avoids that area. Yet now, with pressure rising and the season hanging in the balance, even he is acknowledging something must change. And that admission hits differently because it feels like a coach recognizing the urgency of the moment. Broderick Jones is out. Derek Harmon is out. The run defense is stretched thin. Y.A. Black must step up. Joey Porter Jr.'s health is uncertain. DK Metcalf is banged up. Ben Skowronek is limited. Aaron Rodgers is set to return and provide the spark the offense has badly needed. And behind all of this, the potential elevation of Asante Samuel Jr. looms if Porter can't go. Everything that matters right now, the offensive recalibration, the defensive patchwork, the accountability from the coaching staff, is happening at the same time the speculation about Tomlin's future is heating up. It creates a tension in Pittsburgh that fans can feel, a sense that something bigger than a week-to-week game plan is shifting, a question of whether this season is simply one rough stretch or the beginning of an organizational turning point. And that brings us here, to the real question that Steelers fans have to weigh for themselves as this story continues developing. If the whispers around Tomlin grow louder, and the Titans or another team officially comes calling with real draft capital, what do you think Pittsburgh should do? Picking up right where we left off, the tension surrounding Mike Tomlin's future doesn't fade as the season pushes forward, In fact, it grows heavier, because every development inside the building adds a new layer to the picture. And when the head coach steps to the podium and openly admits that the offense needs to make drastic adjustments, specifically in the middle of the field, it tells you this isn't just another routine week in Pittsburgh. It's a shift in tone, a shift in urgency, and maybe even a subtle acknowledgement that the current formula is no longer enough to carry this roster through the home stretch. Arthur Smith's second-half game planning against Chicago gave fans their first real glimpse of what this offense could be if it embraced modern concepts. Deep crossers, layered designs, stress routes on linebackers, concepts that were there, ready to hit, but never fully exploited because Mason Rudolph continued to default to the sidelines. Plays were open, receivers had leverage, the read was there, but the ball never came out over the middle, and that's where Tomlin's admission takes on real meaning. If the head coach himself is now recognizing that the offense must evolve, the return of Aaron Rodgers becomes more than just a veteran quarterback coming back from a short absence. It becomes the potential turning point for the entire identity of the unit. Rodgers has never been afraid to attack the middle. He sees windows other quarterbacks don't. He's willing to rip a dig between safeties or fire a seam against tight coverage. And if he does that, it forces defenses to treat Pittsburgh with respect in all three levels instead of squeezing the boundaries and daring the quarterback to beat them inside. Suddenly, routes open. Suddenly, Calvin Austin 3's speed means something. Suddenly, DK Metcalf's physicality in traffic becomes an asset instead of an unused tool. The Steelers don't need an explosive 35-point offense to win down the stretch. They just need balance. They need unpredictability. They need to make defenses defend every blade of grass. Meanwhile, on the defensive side, the pressure mounts in an entirely different way. Losing Derek Harmon matters more than most fans realize. He had quietly become one of the key pieces in stabilizing the run front, especially with Daniel Equalee already down. Without them, Pittsburgh's interior gets thin fast, pushing Y.A. Black into a role larger than anything he's carried to this point. Yes, he showed flashes, the forced fumble and recovery were massive, but now he has to anchor the line, not just rotate in it, and that becomes even more critical with Buffalo on deck, a team built on bruising runs that test discipline and physicality. And while the speculation continues about a potential elevation for Asante Samuel Jr., the truth is that Pittsburgh might not have much of a choice if Joey Porter Jr.'s hip flexor doesn't respond quickly enough. Samuel has the resume. He has the instincts, but he doesn't yet have the full command of this defensive system, and preparing him on a short week while facing an elite quarterback puts him in a trial by fire. Still, that's where Tomlin has always thrived, asking young players to step up, adapt, compete, and fight through adversity. But what makes all of this so fascinating and so volatile is that it's happening at the exact same time the Tomlin trade conversation hangs in the air. Every admission he makes, every schematic adjustment, every injury update, every press conference, everything is being viewed through a different lens, a lens that hasn't existed in Pittsburgh for nearly 2 decades. Fans aren't just asking whether the Steelers can win their next game, they're asking whether the head coach who defined an entire era might be preparing for his next chapter. And if that chapter unfolds in Tennessee, it wouldn't be because Tomlin ran from pressure, it would be because the Titans offer something few struggling franchises can: a young quarterback with upside, elite defensive pieces, a premium draft pick, and a city building a brand new football cathedral. More importantly, they offer a blank canvas, a chance for Tomlin to shape a culture from day one, in a place desperate for exactly what he brings: structure, accountability, and a rock-solid identity. Still, until anything becomes official, Pittsburgh has to operate like this is business as usual. Rodgers is returning. Alex Highsmith is returning. The offense is preparing to shift its approach. The defense is patching holes. And Tomlin is trying to find solutions that keep this team alive in the playoff hunt while the noise around him gets louder. The question now is simple, but massive. If this offense truly starts attacking the middle of the field and Rodgers stabilizes the passing game, could this be the turning point that pulls Pittsburgh back into contention? Picking up exactly where the momentum left off, the possibility of a late-season turnaround hinges on whether this offense can finally evolve into something more than the predictable, sideline-centric unit it has been for most of the year. Because if Pittsburgh truly embraces the middle of the field the way Tomlin hinted, it won't just change the passing attack, it will change the way opposing defenses are forced to play them. And that shift matters now more than ever, with the season entering a phase in which every possession, every adjustment, and every inch carries postseason implications. Aaron Rodgers stepping back into the lineup becomes the most important domino in that transformation. For weeks, the Steelers have designed plays that break open across the middle, only for the ball to never arrive. Last week alone, twin crossers and layered deep patterns were dialed up with precision, creating natural leverage advantages that should have produced chunk gains, yet the passes stayed outside the numbers. When your quarterback is unwilling to test the interior, defenses clamp down on the boundaries, suffocating the routes Pittsburgh leans on most. But Rodgers has never played that way. His entire career has been built on punishing teams that gamble inside, taking advantage of seams that appear for a split second, and delivering the ball with a confidence that makes coordinators hesitate before overcommitting to the edges. If he brings that mentality back with him, players like DK Metcalf immediately become more dangerous. Defenders can no longer shade outside, waiting on comebacks and outbreaking routes. They have to honor deep crossers, digs, and glances, routes that Metcalf can dominate if he's given a runway in space. Calvin Austin III, in turn, finally gets opportunities for yards after catch instead of constantly running bubble screens and boundary speedouts that go nowhere. And the tight ends, especially in short to intermediate windows, become legitimate weapons instead of afterthoughts. Suddenly, every level of the field becomes functional again. But offense alone isn't enough to stabilize this team. The defense continues absorbing hits week after week, and this stretch may be the toughest test yet. Losing Derek Harmon exposes a vulnerability that Pittsburgh thought it had patched earlier in the year. Without his size and strength inside, the Steelers risk returning to the early season struggles that saw opponents gashing them between the tackles. Y.A. Black has the brute force, but now he needs to show he can anchor consistently across an entire game, not just flash in moments. Because against Buffalo, against physical backs, against a team that forces missed tackles, Pittsburgh must be perfect in the trenches. Then there's the uncertainty surrounding Joey Porter Jr. His presence changes the entire structure of the secondary. Without him, the defense becomes significantly more susceptible to vertical concepts and intermediate crossers, especially against elite quarterbacks. That's what makes the potential elevation of Asante Samuel Jr. such an intriguing subplot. He's talented, experienced, instinctive, but still new to the system. Throwing him into a major role this soon would demand immediate chemistry and communication on the back end, something that's difficult to achieve in a single practice week. Still, Tomlin's comments about being open to elevating him signal that it's at least a real option if Porter can't go. And within all of this, the schematic tweaks, the injury adjustments, the quarterback shift, the playoff push, the cloud of uncertainty around Tomlin's long-term future makes the atmosphere around the team feel heavier. Every decision, every lineup choice, every press conference quote feels like it's carrying double weight. Because if this season doesn't stabilize, if the offense stalls again, if the defense can't hold up, then the whispers surrounding a potential trade will only grow louder. The Titans, the Giants, the Jets, these aren't just speculative names. These are organizations evaluating their futures at the exact same time Pittsburgh is wrestling with its own direction. That's why these final weeks matter so much. They're not just defining the Steelers' playoff chances, they may be defining the next era of the franchise. Whether that means Tomlin stays, whether he entertains discussions elsewhere, or whether the Rooney family decides that reshaping the roster begins at the very top, everything is being written in real time right now. And it all leads to a final, unavoidable question for Steelers Nation. If this surge with Rodgers, this offensive evolution, and this defensive resilience truly begin to click over the next few games, do you believe it will be enough to convince Pittsburgh and Tomlin himself that the best path forward is staying together rather than starting over? And this is where everything converges into the most revealing stretch of football this team has faced in years. Because if the Steelers finally unlock the middle of the field, if Aaron Rodgers stabilizes the offense with timing, anticipation, and fearlessness, and if the defense manages to hold together despite the injuries and rotation changes, then Pittsburgh won't just be fighting for a playoff spot. They'll be fighting to redefine what this organization looks like going forward. Momentum changes narratives, and narratives shape decisions. A late-season surge would not only rebuild confidence in the current structure, but it would also reframe the conversation about whether this franchise is truly heading toward a transition or just pushing through another turbulent stretch the way it has so many times before under Tomlin. But if the offense stalls again, if the schematic adjustments never fully materialize, if Rodgers can't elevate the passing game beyond basic sideline throws, and if the defense begins to crumble without its core pieces, then the opposite becomes true. Every shortcoming fuels the speculation, every poor performance magnifies the questions, and every missed opportunity becomes part of the larger debate about whether a fresh start, via a trade, might actually be in the best interest of both the coach and the franchise. That's the weight of this moment. It's not just about winning games, it's about determining whether the Steelers are nearing the end of an era or simply facing another test that will eventually be absorbed into the Tomlin legacy. And as all of this unfolds, the fans feel it. They feel the shift in the air. They feel the uncertainty that hasn't existed in nearly 2 decades. They feel the urgency in every drive, every adjustment, every snap. Not because they doubt the team's talent, but because they know what's at stake. This stretch isn't just about football. It's about identity. It's about whether stability continues or whether Pittsburgh steps into unfamiliar territory, a potential rebuild under a new leader, a new philosophy, a new cultural centerpiece. So as we head toward the conclusion of this storyline, as Rodgers returns, as the offense adjusts, as the defense battles through attrition, and as the Tomlin discussion hovers over every decision like a shadow neither the team nor the fan base can ignore, the big picture becomes clearer. Whatever happens next will define the direction of the franchise for years. And that leaves one final question hanging in the air as we close out this coverage and move toward the next chapter of the story. Do you believe the Steelers are on the brink of a resurgence that steadies everything, or the brink of a turning point that changes everything? Drop your thoughts below. And if you want to keep riding with us through every twist, every rumor, and every moment of Steelers drama, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and check out the videos on your screen for more in-depth breakdowns. And continuing straight from that moment, the reality is this: the Steelers have reached a crossroads where every decision carries consequences far beyond the final score. What happens over these next weeks won't just decide playoff hopes, it will determine the trajectory of the franchise, the future of the coaching staff, and the tone of the next chapter in Pittsburgh football. The uncertainty surrounding Mike Tomlin, whether it grows into something tangible or fades as the team finds its footing, has created an atmosphere unlike anything fans have experienced during his tenure. And that alone shows just how significant this stretch has become. Because when a coach is established as Tomlin starts acknowledging philosophical adjustments, like expanding the passing attack into the middle of the field, it suggests an openness to change that hasn't always defined the Steelers' approach. For years, fans have pleaded for this evolution. Analysts have highlighted the lack of interior targets. Opposing defenses have exploited it. Now, with Aaron Rodgers stepping back in, the opportunity to finally reshape the offense is right in front of them. Rodgers thrives in those tight window throws. He manipulates linebackers with his eyes, freezes safeties with pump fakes, and hits crossers in rhythm. If this offense truly leans into his skill set, the transformation could be immediate, but the margin for error is thin. The defense will have to compensate for injuries